And he said, "What is the matter with Justin?" And I said, "I don't know, you tell me." When Justin was born, I felt like God saying, "I have something special planned for him." Justin had many different behavioral issues that were concerning. He had learning disabilities.
Which we've been to many professionals and counselors over the years and would pretty much get a different diagnosis every time.
So we always knew that there was not something right, but we didn't know what we were dealing with.
And the issues with our second son just began to get worse, and we couldn't control.
He was so filled with rage and was doing things that did not feel he was safe. He stole from everyone I know for the next 8 years. And he would eat us out of house and home. We actually literally had to chain the fridge. So nobody really knows how difficult it was in our home except us. And I remember Kristen sharing with her group what it was like, and somebody minimized it. It was very hurtful to her, and I said, "Well, they don't know. They don't know what it was like."
And so everything began to unravel. Our family was unraveling. And kind of looking ahead, all three of our children ended up battling with addiction issues at different points. And so the family was unraveling.
And the family we have now is different than the family we had up to then. It was devastating. It was dark. And there were 2 years I didn't even have a quiet time. I could not talk to God. I was a missionary. I was on the field. But I was mad at God. I was mad at where my kids were. And this is not the way it was supposed to be.
Early on in this process, I was praying one day, "Lord, I wish you would just change my son, change his behavior." And it was like God spoke to me at that point, and he said, "Well, maybe I don't want to change him or the circumstances. Maybe I want you to change." And that was a profound insight for me. And I think from that time on, I've tried to pray differently. So when I pray about somebody, my first prayer ought not to be, "Lord, change that person," or "Lord, change my circumstances." My first prayer is, "Lord, what do you want me to be in these circumstances? What do you want me to learn?" I mean, I gained a deeper respect for God's love for us, because one of the verses that came to mind in all of this was John 1:9. He came to his own, but his own did not receive him. And I thought, as a father, everything we have done for our son, that he just rejects it. He doesn't listen. He does his own thing. And so he was rejecting our love. In subsequent years, I was learning to love somebody who was really rejecting and continuing to love, to be in his corner. I still love you, and I'm here for you. I'm not going to do, and Dee and I agreed on this, we're not going to do things that enable wrong behavior. It just got to be to the point that his behavior was such, and he was a danger to the family, that we needed to kick him out of the house when he turned 18. And so we had to ask him to leave the home, to tell your son, "You can't live with us." Of course, that's devastating. You don't bring a child into the world expecting to have to do that.
He was in a tent in the backyard until we figured out where he could go.
Also, just days after having to make that decision, again, I'm in the back porch and just processing this with God and praying, grieving, and even crying. And I finally kind of get to the point, sort of tongue-in-cheek, but I say, "Okay, God, we have done everything we know to do to help you. You're on your own." We had to get to that point, and it's a hard point to be on, because you constantly want to step in and help. And yet we were coming to the realization that we couldn't. And God has shown himself faithful to us and answered.
Justin finished his high school degree there at the California Conservation Corps, and I later found out he trusted God there. He called us and he said, "I've given money to 3 missionaries that are going on missions this summer, and there's a 4th. Could you help?" And so, of course, we did, and I knew at that point. And we all were together last Christmas, which was significant. I wouldn't say the relationships are healed, but they're getting there.
So God has worked, and we're thankful to God because at a moment it really looked like this is just a mess. You know, our kids are really making bad choices. But now they have come through it. All of the addiction issues are things of the past.
And what I learned through that, God took me through Isaiah 61 over a period of a number of years, that He is near to the brokenhearted and He binds up their wounds. He met me in that pain and He was there for me.
And we've learned in the process that these journeys aren't fun at all, but God uses them and to be able to minister to others.
God uses these circumstances in our life to strengthen us. And then He uses those people to rebuild the ruined cities. Like, these moments are not wasted. And I saw my husband be transformed by these things and me in terms of our compassion for others and our ability to connect with others' hearts and their pain and say, it will be all right. Hang in there, it will be all right. So hanging in there, trusting God, and I've learned from God that one of His highest values is perseverance in the dark times. Persist in that love as Christ, as God would love. And such an example of how God loves us even though we're rejecting Him. That's how God relates to us. So just continue to love them and trust God and walk forward and do the next right thing.